Welcome to Rock Talk. We're at the Kingston Collection Setting the Space studio, Oktane Media, Plymouth Rock TV Media Center. I have to be on my top of my game because I have Alison Maloni here, who is a seasoned journalist, television personality, media coach, consultant. What else do you do? Do you
Mom,
karate,
writer.
black belt karate?
I know I should take that up though.
Yeah, and you should just add all those to your resume, because these days, we were talking prior, you gotta be a little bit of everything if you want to do this kind of work, right?
You do. You know, it's competitive, and you have to stand outside the box and think differently and offer different services other than, oh, we just do PR. You have to think, okay, media training, you know, even social media, helping people build their brands through social media. So many people think, you know, it's just selling a product, or it's just putting a post out there, and video just dominates, and telling your story is so important, and a lot of people don't know how to do it.
Media is such a huge part of every industry now, and you can hurt yourself by having a social media page and just thinking you can throw up if you have a bad product, all you're doing is telling everyone, more people, you have a bad product.
Yeah.
And then if you don't do it right, you even look more foolish. So you gotta do it right.
Yeah, you got to do it right. You have to pay attention to what people want. You know, we always say to our clients, and I always think, even as a publicist, why would people want to buy your product? Why would people want to go on your social media page? Think about like who we follow and why we follow, because we want to get recipes, we want to be educated on certain things, we want our fitness tips, you know, those types of things. So I think it's hard because you're like, I have a great product, or I have a great service, and I should just talk about it. But that's really not what you do. You let other people talk about it. You do videos, you have testimonials, you do behind the scenes, you introduce people to your staff, because that's what people, you know, they want to see the story of the product and how is it going to help them.
And you're a great example of why coming on something like this and telling your story is great, because meeting you, it's like, oh, she's very easy to talk to, and that's so important when you're dealing with clients, that you want to, look a certain way and deliver your message a certain way, but then be a human being.
Yeah,
you know?
You have to be authentic and real. And I think you're right, because in social media, you want to look, right? You want to look perfect. You want to present yourself as professional, and you know what you're talking about, and smart and successful. But on the other side, you don't want to be too out there. You don't want to be complaining about things you want to be real, but you don't want to be so much that they're like, wow, this person's a hot mess. So it's finding that that balance. But I also think you need to let people into who you are.
Right.
You know, that you are a mom, you're a dad, you're a grandfather, that, you know, you like to do things, because then people can relate to you.
Yeah.
And it's all about, you know, being relatable.
And I want to get to know you, right? So I just recently learned that Springfield is part of Massachusetts. That's way out there. And
us Western Mass people think that we're forgotten.
Lewis and Clark, I think, were trying to make their way out to discover that part of the state, and just gave up when they got to Worcester. But you're out in the Springfield area, and you're an anchor at Newsmax, a contributor, and you go down to New York quite a bit. And so tell me about Alison Maloni. Where did you get started?
I was an intern. I went to UMass Amherst, and then I interned. Everyone says you got to get an internship, so I interned at WWLP, which is the NBC affiliate. Then graduated and went to Poughkeepsie, New York, and I was a one-man band. So I would set up the stories, I would drive my own car, carry my own gear. Back then the cameras were like 100 pounds in the tripods, remember those? Mm-hmm. I would set up and do the interview, come back, edit it, and then anchor. All for, I think, like maybe $15,000 a year.
I remember when I first graduated college, I was applying for jobs like that, and there was one up in like Bangor, Maine, the NBC affiliate. Maybe our resumes cross paths? Well, I'm older than you, but
Bangor, Maine. I applied
there.
So I dragged my best friend, because back then, you had VHS tapes. You had to send in your reel, and I didn't want to mail it.
Okay.
I wanted to go and personally deliver it to the news director. Now, I had no idea if the news director was even going to be there, but I dragged my friend to drive up there. I think it took us like 6 or 7 hours. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I literally went in the studio, dropped it off. I didn't get to meet with the news director, and came out within a couple minutes. And she's like, "You didn't even get an interview?" And I said, "No, I just needed to hand deliver it." She's like, "Oh my gosh."
Well,
so we had a fun time.
I would say that you would have been hired in 8 seconds, because they hired me sight unseen, and then they told me what the salary was, and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to like work dining or a diner or something, you know, bussing tables, and they're like, I guess. So my whole image of like being a news anchor, I'm thinking, but then you see your news anchor bussing tables at a restaurant, and I was like, I guess that's how they do it.
In a small market. And you have to start small, just like anything. You know, I thought I'd get out of college and be on the Today Show, and realized that that was going to take a long time if I wanted to make a network. So yeah, a lot of these journalists, and now they're doing more with less. So yeah, they're working part-time jobs to pay the bills, because it doesn't pay you great.
It does not. And again, I got to credit you for taking advantage of opportunities outside of it and learning all the other stuff, because if you're not a well-rounded, versatile engine, you know, you're going to be dependent on other people to do things, and then that never works, it seems.
No, you have to do things for yourself. And I think that if you don't, I actually had a call with a friend, and she's more of a coach. And I said, yeah, I really want to do this webinar, but I don't know when. And she said, can you look at your calendar right now? And I said, sure. She goes, pick a date in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and I want you to tell me when you're doing this webinar. And I was like, okay. But I needed somebody to hold me accountable and say, no, do it now, because you're going to keep putting it off. So I think, as you know, whether you're working for yourself or you work for a company or you're trying to get a start, you have to move forward, and you have to take those steps, even if you're scared. Yeah. Because you're going to stay in the same place.
Yeah. And I think you jump out of the plane and figure out the parachute on the way down, which may or may not be good advice. So I don't know if I should sign my name to the bottom of that check, but But I like recording, you know, and just doing things. And we have a woman who came in. She was literally off the street. It's going to sound weird that she came in off the street, but she came into the store here, and she was from western part of the state, and she had done a radio show, and she saw the green screens and the lights and all that. And I just said, well, why don't we just do a show and see how it works? Because then the hardest part you've already kind of broken through. Instead of talking about it forever, just do stuff.
You don't have to think about it. You just do it.
You don't have to think about it. Yeah. And people have the tools, like I think more than ever, like you were saying, those 100-pound cameras. Now you have so many, great camera gear, right, at your fingertips.
I mean, even just, for companies, we even tell clients, if you need to, just use your iPhone. If you want to do behind the scenes things, or you want to show your team, or you want to just do an Instagram story, you don't have to, don't think about it too much. Just do it. Because if you think about it, then it's not authentic. It's staged, you thought about it, it's choppy. Just do it. It's okay to make mistakes too in your videos, on camera especially. It's okay.
Yeah. And there is a balance of being authentic, but then also not making yourself look too silly.
Right.
And I think that's where your coaching comes in. Because I think a lot of people don't even know. Would you say?
They don't. I don't think they do. And I think this is why this is great, because when you put somebody in a different role where they're being interviewed, they can tell their story. And it's not them just saying, I'm the CEO of this company, or I do this, or I do that. It's having somebody else ask them the questions. And then they're going to get things that you wouldn't necessarily say if you were doing it on your own.
So being at Newsmax and doing the types of things, what were some of the big moments in your career that you were like, wow, that was pretty impressive, or like, I can't believe I'm in this moment right now, or you're about to interview somebody impressive, or?
Actually, there was a couple times, but one was recently. It was election night, and we do the morning show. We were going on early, but we weren't sure how it was going to work, because we were obviously doing 24/7 coverage, but we didn't know we didn't think we'd get the results that night. We thought we'd be going into the next morning saying it hasn't been called. So my co-anchor and I, we got an early dinner. We went back to her hotel room, had a couple glasses of wine, and we're just watching it. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're so anxious. We don't know what's going to happen. So we both went to our rooms and tried to sleep. I slept for like an hour, woke up. It's called. The election was called. Wow. And I went over to Newsmax. It's probably, I can't remember, I think it was 3 a.m. And I walk in, and everybody, I think it's when Trump was speaking, and everyone is standing. There's multiple TVs, and it was silent. All you could see were the people standing watching and just listening to Trump. Now, whether you like him or not, it was such an interesting night just to see people's reaction. But, here we are in the world of communication where all we're doing is talking and texting and all this stuff like that, and it was silent. And just to watch people it was something I never thought I would see, and it was just interesting to see being, in the media where it's go, go, go. Everything I felt like had stopped. So that was just kind of interesting, and to go on in the morning and to deliver the news was very something I'll never forget.
Historic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like anytime you get to do something like that, I mean, you think back to who was one of the first news anchors to announce a new president. Like, I mean, the first president born in a hospital. This is a trivia question. Was Jimmy Carter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
right? I mean, because you think back, like, he was 100, obviously just passed away, but
Yeah.
technology is so new and exponentially growing, and being at the cusp of something historic in a live sense is quite remarkable, considering, like, what's really interesting live? Sports and then, and something like that. Other than that, everything is recorded.
Right.
And,
Well, and we just knew too, because we were the first, show, of the morning that people will go to bed and they're waking up and they were, watching us and hearing that, Trump won, and whether they were happy or not, but just hearing that for the first time was pretty cool.
Now, are you responsible for writing your own scripts, or do you have a news?
We have a team.
Yep.
There's always like an executive producer, and then there's producers, and usually there's producers in charge of segments. So, for example, an interview, if we were to do with a senator, there would be one producer who's in charge of that. They would write it, but then we always go in and we just tweak it, to our voice. We add questions, we change things around. You always want to just go in and edit. So, yeah.
And do you feel good about the direction news is headed? I mean, I oftentimes look at a lot of the news and be like, oh man, it's so depressing.
It's
like,
very
who got
depressing.
Killed and murdered and raped, and who lost everything. And in some respects, it's like, is it time for a rebirth of news in a different way, or what are your thoughts on that?
I honestly think that's why podcasts are doing so well. I think a variety of podcasts, whether it's news. With news, you can only tell a story in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
With podcasts, you could have that one story, that one person, and they could talk for an hour. I mean, if you listen to Joe Rogan, sometimes he has people for 3 hours. You can really get the nitty and gritty. What is it? Nitty gritty. Nitty gritty.
I get
what you
right.
say? Of that person.
That's a great podcast name, the Nitty Gritty. Yeah, right.
I think people are looking for more of a long format, and I think they like podcasts because they're not necessarily edited. They just go. With news, it's quick, it's to the point, and I think that people are looking for a different outlet because it is depressing. I love the news, obviously, but I get done sometimes with a newscast thinking, oh my God, what is happening? Is the world ending? Are we, you look at the finances, you look at the infighting, in politics, you look at what's going on, and then you're reporting on, somebody who murdered someone, and you're like, whoa, I need to go watch some Bravo because I cannot.
Well, I think the more we know about how our brains work, I think even with social media, we're not built to be exposed to so much. For instance, a young kid will scroll through TikTok or something, and it's like funny, sad, sensual, exciting, angry. You're not built to go through that many emotional shifts, yet that's what they're doing all the time.
Oh, yeah.
They're scrolling. And you see it in the news. It's like, how much of a diet of bad news should I get? Because if you were in pioneer times, you weren't getting information that there was maybe 6 months later when the Pony Express brings you the town criers printout or something, whatever they would call that. I don't know.
Days ago.
Yeah.
I take a break from it on the weekends. I really try, and I know I need to be informed, and I am, but I don't pay attention to as much news as I normally do because I need a break.
Yeah.
I need to just focus on the kids and family and life and things like that, and
balance.
Because you do. If I have the news on all day because I'm pitching for my clients. I'm prepping for shows, but sometimes you got to turn it off. And I also have made my social media. I've gotten rid of some people I follow, and I've tried to make it more positive, more Mel Robbins, more Gary Vee, more things like that. So that's what's coming up in my feed. Dog videos, like funny things, because I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Oh, what's that shark? That like all these things. So
yeah, it can be overwhelming, and I like the interviews, and you nailed it with the long form because, again, we talked prior, and with coaching, I think for a lot of people who get in front of a camera, they're not themselves, and it takes a while to warm up. Like sports, you got to stretch, warm up, and all that. And I think that you see it on Rogan, and you see it other places where they're at the beginning. they're aware of everything, and then
Yeah.
an hour in, they're just talking.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so much more of their guard is let down. And that's why I had this, I talked with somebody about those Hot Wings, or you know that show, the guy interviews celebrities, but then they keep eating progressively hotter and hotter wings.
I don't know about that.
Oh yeah,
That's fun.
It's on YouTube. It's huge.
Okay.
You know, he'll interview Shaquille O'Neal, and they start with a wing, and then they get hotter and hotter.
Okay.
Hot Ones is the name of the show, and by the end they can't even function, right? And this guy's used to it, and he's asking straight up questions, and because they're thinking more about this is so hot. That it's almost like truth serum. So when you ask them a question, they just answer it. So you get through all the bullshit, you know, and it's just like, I answered the question, you know, get me out of here. I need milk or something like that. I almost started doing something like that with cold plunging. You know, like if I brought you and we cold plunge, and then I'm asking, you would just be like, you know, you're thinking more of the stress that you're under than answer, but you would answer probably more truthfully.
I love that.
I don't know.
I'll have to watch. I love Hot Wings too, so I'll have to watch.
I'll send you a link to it, but and then you'll be my first guest on our cold plunge interview.
I hate the colds,
You know?
but I'll
That's
do it.
the idea.
I'll do it. I
You know,
know.
it's persevering
They say it's
through
good
it.
for you. I mean, the more and more people in the fitness industry say, you know, do it first thing in the morning.
I would, if I don't stop myself right now, I'll go into a whole 45-minute diatribe of like, unfortunately, when you talk to somebody who does CrossFit and that's all they talk about, with the cold plunge, I get asked all the time, and then I just go,
It's almost as like if you fast, like people who fast, they will go into it. See, I'm the person that when I take a shower, I put it to the hottest temperature.
Okay, yeah.
So I should probably.
But there is a balance, like
Yeah.
the hot and cold. There's benefit there.
Yes.
But I hear you. I do the same thing. But it's great to have you here because I think that part of the experience for Rock Talk is getting a little inside peek into different careers. You had mentioned being an intern when you started out. I have an intern that comes in from high school, and I forget what it's like for that, to be that young. And,
I know.
And you see their wide-eyed, optimistic faces when they, want to do stuff like this. But it's those days of interning, man.
I know.
Remember that?
I do. So I remember when I was interning, I was opening the mail and getting the press releases from the fax machine that would come through and filing them. We had folders for each day, and I'm answering the phone and listening to the police scanners, and I was like, ooh, this is not what I want to do. Why am I not reporting at the age of 19 years old?
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, for a couple days, I did what they asked me to, and then I said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to learn anything this way.
Yeah.
Even though I needed to know how to do that, because everything that you learn, obviously, you'll take with you. So I did appreciate all of that. But I went to the news director, I knocked on his door, and I said, I'm very thankful for the opportunity, but I just can I go out on the road with a reporter, and can I start writing scripts? And he said, sure, go out tomorrow. All I need to do was ask.
Yeah.
But if I didn't, he probably would have just kept me in that role of opening the mail and answering the phone. So I did get to do that, and I did get to write, and some of the stories I wrote went on air, and I got to, practice talking in front of the camera. The reporters were great, but just ask. You never know.
That's a great piece of advice because I think people are afraid to do that. You're afraid.
What's the worst they're going to say?
Right.
No.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you already got no before you asked.
Yeah.
Because you're saying that in your head. And,
Yeah.
And I think people miss so many opportunities when they already assume that it's not going to happen.
Right. But I have to remind myself of that, even, now.
Yeah.
You think, oh, you're at this point, you can do anything. And then, everybody's insecure about certain things. And so I have to remind myself back, all right, I just need to ask. What's the worst that's going to happen? So
Yeah.
I have some things I have to ask in the next couple of days of clients and people. So, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Okay. All right. So we're going to hold your feet to the fire, I guess, on that. The media has changed so much. We obviously alluded to it with subject matter and whether news is streaming, and so many things have changed. Ease of which you get access to tools like cameras. And my niece sent a video. She's like, oh, my brother and I did this music video together. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I went to graduate school for this.
Yeah.
And they did it so easily on CapCut or something
Yes.
crazy. And I was blown away. And so in one respect, the media is so undefined in so many different ways. But it's so important for everything. Because every real estate person, insurance person, everybody is a media mogul because you have a media channel, a social media channel, and it's just up to you, I guess, to put the right foot out there.
Yeah, it is. We're in a great time because there's so many things available. Like you mentioned CapCut, or you can, do, editing software and things like that. And I think this is great for people because they don't just have to worry about, well, I have to get on my local news. That's the only way I'm going to get my story out. Or I, want to be on, this network, or I have to be in the Wall Street Journal. There are so many ways because of video, because of social media, that people can get their story out, and it's not going to cost them $10,000, $15,000 to hire an agency or to hire a production company. And when they do work with, somebody like you or somebody like me, they're going to get a lot more than they would if they were to work with a traditional agency, whether it's, help with coaching, help with social media, ways to get their story out. So we're in a great space, but you have to know how to do it. And you can't just, the kids do, they know what they're doing, but I think a lot of, people in business, we're focused on our business. So you do need to have some guidance and some people to help you, tell the story, put the videos together, because it's time consuming.
For sure. And I think that getting the message right.
Right.
It's such a huge part of it that, again, you have the tools, like everybody has a paintbrush, but then there's Van Gogh and there's Da Vinci, and you, just because you have the pencil doesn't mean you're Shakespeare. And
right.
It's important to refine those and understand at the bottom of it, of the barrel of all the things you can do, you still have to have a good message.
Yeah, you have to have a good message, and I think it's getting people involved who know what they're doing, right? This webinar I was talking about, I'm horrible at creating emails and the ClickFunnels and all of that. And my friend said, oh, I have a virtual assistant. She can do this for you in no time. I sent her some text and she came up with 6 emails. That would have taken me days to do that.
I know.
So I always try and say, okay, this is, while I'm spending the money, it's going to save me money in the end of the day because I'm going to free myself up. I can focus on doing other things. So it's the same thing with video and content creation and telling your story. While you can do it on your own, are you going to do it right? Are you going to have the right message? Is it going to look good? Because you don't want it to look choppy and amateur. Well, you want it to be real, but you need a little bit of experience in there.
Yeah. I want to take a break and then come back and talk about more specific things that you work with clients on, because I think that's hugely important and would be a great tool for those watching who are wondering, like, what does all this mean? Like, what services can I utilize, that kind of thing. But before, I'm curious about, in terms of your career, like what would be the dream scenario for you? Is there anybody, top 3 interviews that you would like to do, or is that something even on your list? Like I always say, I'm curious about what somebody's worst day of their life was, what their best one, and who their bucket list interview person they'd like to just, not even interview, sit down to dinner,
Okay.
and chat with. But
okay.
Alive or dead, I guess.
Alive or dead. Ooh.
Yeah. Putting you on the
spot.
spot.
What I want to be when I grow up, I would love to do something like a Dateline. Like I love Dateline. Like Andrea Canning. Like
you said, you like the true crime.
I do. I love the true crime. So I love to go and interview people with these big cases. Like that is, I love that. So maybe someday
you following like the Karen Reed stuff all that? I know nothing about it. I don't even. I just know nothing, but I'm around people that know every. Oh,
the people that know, they know everything.
Yeah.
They are involved with everything. It's so interesting. It's starting in April, so her new trial is starting in April. So you're going to hear a lot about it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know if she was the victim or if she was the person. I knew nothing.
No. Yeah.
But I intentionally just stayed away from it, just because I figured there'll be some type of Netflix documentary.
There's already been the 2020s and Datelines.
Yeah.
But I would love to do that, because that's my passion, so maybe someday. So that's on my bucket list to do.
And even maybe we could do this, we'll create a mock-drama of a case. Like you create your own, narrative of like something wild, because you...
like the murder mystery dinners.
Yeah, like a documentary now. Have you ever seen that? With Fred Armisen, 2 Saturday Night Live guys, and Lauren Michaels from Saturday Night Live, and they came up with, they do mockumentaries of documentaries that we've seen, and then they take them and then they put their own little comedic spin on it, but it's a documentary. But so much of television now is shot in that one camera perspective, like The Office or something, where it's like the camera is part of it, so they're looking over and winking at it or something like that. And maybe we can have
I
some
love
fun there.
that.
That'll be fun.
I like that. Yeah, let's do that.
You write the whole story, the whole murder, and
That'd be great.
get it
I know.
out
I
there.
always try and figure out. I'm like, I don't think it was the husband. It was this. It was that. And then my daughter will watch it with me too. She's like, it's not the husband, Mom. It's too early for the husband.
It's always the person you most medium suspect.
Yes.
Like not the person they want you to look over here at, or this one. It's always the one, and that's how we analyze them too. We're like, okay, who do you think it? It's always the husband.
Yeah, it
turns
usually
out,
is. Or the
those
wife,
guys.
yeah.
Oh, I suppose, yeah. But it's most 99.9% of murders are by somebody you know.
Somebody you know. Yeah.
And they don't ever go down those roads a lot of times.
No.
And what do you think about Scott Peterson?
Ooh,
I've seen so many things on that, and I'm like,
of course, I read a book about that.
Yeah.
I think he did it. I really do. I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's so suspicious that he decided to go fishing on Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
3 hours away. That'd be like if I went to Maine on Christmas Eve day.
Right, but there's so much. Do you ever see the Making Murderer documentary with like Stephen Avery?
The one in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So you watch, and this is the power of documentaries. You watch that thing, and then you are absolutely, unequivocally convinced he did it. And then I think Candace Owens did something on Daily Wire or something.
There was
I forget.
something else that came out after.
And then you're like, okay, maybe he did do
didn't.
it or whatever, or did or didn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you can be manipulated
You can.
into. You never know with these things.
You never know. I did read a book about him, but again, it was probably written by a prosecutor. I can't remember. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like he did. But I think what they're trying to get him off death row. I think that was the latest. Or I don't know if that ever happened. But
Yeah.
The Menendez brothers. There's so many cases. There's so many cases. So yeah, I'd love to do that. That's my bucket list. And who I would like. Actually, I'd like to interview Megyn Kelly. I follow her podcast, or Joe Rogan too, just because I just think that they've taken their career, like how they started, and now where they are, like completely different where I think they would have imagined. I just think that they're interesting in how they've, I mean, they obviously were famous before their podcast, but how they've grown their audience and their following and things like that. So I don't know, I think that's pretty cool.
And she's a great example. Bill O'Reilly, Rogan, of course, who are making a mark in their own creation.
Yeah.
They're doing something different, which you can only do if you've got talent and if you've got something to offer. Otherwise, there's just too much competition.
Yeah.
But they're bringing their audience in and saying, "This is what I do," and follow me. And
well, and it's the power, too, of what they're doing that's different. When I started my agency, people wanted to be, get me in the New York Times, get me on the Today Show, get me on Fox. Now it's, can you get me on Rogan? Can you get me on Megyn Kelly? Like, they want these podcasts that they know have millions of listeners and followers. It's no longer these big cable news outlets. Now it's podcasts.
I know, and that ship has sailed, I think, for a lot of people who think that they're going to get on Rogan. Maybe you will. We'll arrange that, but for everyone else, it's tough.
Oh, yeah.
So let's take a little break. We'll come back with more. It's Rock Talk here at the Setting the Space Media Center for Plymouth Rock Studios and Oktane Media. And Alison Maloni is here, and we're having a good time. So we'll be back in just a minute.